In Germany, they say, there were two farmers working out in a field together, when as they were digging, one suddenly, clink, struck something in the soil. He looked down, and the other one reached into the ground and pulled up a golden cup. Well, it turned out one of the farmers was very rich and one was very poor, but they had agreed to work together on that field to plant a crop. And so they began to argue about who it was that should get the cup. Well, my shovel struck it first, said the poor farmer. Ah, but I grabbed it first, said the rich farmer. So the two men decided to go to the judge in town and let him decide the matter. Now the judge was a very young man. He hadn't been at his post very long, but when he heard what was going on, he wasn't sure what to say. So he came up with a better idea. I shall give the cup to whoever is wisest among you. I'll give you 3 riddles. And the man who in 3 days' time can give me the best answers to the riddle shall have the cup for his very own. The men agreed that would be a fair contest. And so the judge said, in 3 days' time you must tell me what is the richest thing in the world, what is the heaviest thing in the world, and what is the fastest thing in the world. Answer that and you will win the cup. The 3 men went home. Now the rich farmer, he was greeted by his wife and talked with his wife about the riddles. She was a clever woman. And over dinner, she said, you know, my husband, the richest thing in the whole kingdom must be the king, for he has all the wealth and most of the land. The heaviest thing? Well, of course, that's iron. Anything made of iron is heavier than anything else, so it must be iron. And the fastest thing? Well, that's our old bay mare. She's the fastest horse from anywhere around. She must be the swiftest thing in the world. Now, as for the poor farmer, when he came home, the only one to greet him there was his daughter named Manka. She was a young woman, but his wife had died long ago. And as the second day passed, and the poor farmer still couldn't find good answers to the riddles, he became sad and quiet. Manka noticed, and she said, Father, what's going on? Why are you so sad? And he told her of the riddles, and she said, Ah, I love riddles. And after thinking for a while, she said, Well, Father, when you go to the judge tomorrow, tell him that the richest thing in the world, well, that must be the earth. For the earth gives us everything we have. She grows our crops. She brings our water. Clearly, the earth is far richer than any prince or king. As for the heaviest thing, well, of course, that must be sorrow. For sorrow reaches every family and presses us down, heavier than iron. And as for the fastest thing, well, that must be our minds. For in our minds we can travel to China and back in just a moment. The next day the 2 farmers went to the judge, and sure enough he awarded the golden cup to the poor farmer and his daughter. But before they left, the judge said, Now tell me, farmer, did you find these answers on your own, or did someone help you? And the farmer said, Well, to tell you the truth, Judge, my daughter, who was very clever for her age, knew the answers. Really? Said the judge. I would like to meet her. Could I come by your house tomorrow? And the next day the judge came by and met Manka. And they talked for just a bit as they walked at the edge of the fields. He found that she had read some of the same books that he had. A few days later he came again, and again and again, and as time passed, the 2 of them, they fell in love. And he asked Manka's father for her hand in marriage. And of course he agreed. Now Now the judge, as he offered a ring to Manka, said, "Manka, you are very clever, but I need to do my job. And so if we are to be man and wife, you must promise that you will never contradict me and my job. Whenever my ruling is made, you can't tell anyone a different answer." Manka thought for a while, and she understood his concern. And so she said yes to both the marriage and not contradicting her husband in public. Now this went very well for several weeks. But then, two farmers came along, and they had an argument. You see, it turned out that one of the farmers, his horse, had laid down under the other farmer's cart and given birth to a foal. Now, of course, the farmer who owned the horse thought the foal was his, but the farmer who owned the cart thought the foal was his. And the judge, he said, "Well, I shall give the foal to the farmer that owned the cart. For where a foal is born, let it stay." Well, the farmer who owned the horse knew this wasn't fair, but he didn't know what else to do. But then he remembered people talking about how clever Manka, the judge's wife, was. And lucky for him, he was good friends with Manka's father. And so one day when Manka was visiting her father, the friend farmer came to visit and told his story. At first Manka said, "No, I really can't help you. I can't contradict my husband, especially not in a case that was in court." "No, but please, please, please," said the farmer. That foal is all the wealth I have. If I lose that, I may lose my farm." And finally, Manka's heart was moved. She said, "Okay, on one condition, you must promise not to tell anyone, especially my husband, who gave you these answers. Go out to the road that my husband walks from our house to the court, and take a bucket of water with you. And when he comes by, take a fishing pole and dip it in as if you're fishing in a bucket. And when my husband asks you what you're doing, you'll say, 'You're fishing in a bucket of water.' And when he says, 'Well, that's a foolish thing to do. You'll never catch fish in a bucket,' you can tell him, 'Well, I have as much luck catching fish in a bucket as a cart does of giving birth to a foal.' Say that, and my husband will know that he is wrong. But you must promise not to tell anyone from whom you've heard this." The farmer agreed and went off. And he did as Manka had suggested. But when the judge heard the answer from the farmer, he said, "Wait a minute. Did someone help you with that answer?" And at first the farmer said, No, I thought of it all on my own. I've been reading books and things, yeah." "I don't think so," said the judge. "I see your point, and I will change my decision on one condition. You must tell me who told you this answer." And finally the peasant realized his only way to get his horse was to admit what he had done, and what Manka had done. And that night he came storming back to the house, and he said, "Wife, you contradicted me in front of the public. You have broken our promise, and so now you must leave. Go back to your father's house." Manka realized he was right. She had broken their promise, for a good reason, but she had done it nonetheless. So she said, "Husband, I am sorry for what I've done. You're right, I broke our promise. So let me cook you one more meal. And after that meal I will pack my things and go. But since we've had such a good time together, I ask only one other thing." "What's that?" said her angry husband. "Could I just take the one thing that I love most from this beautiful house?" Okay, whatever you want." And he sat down on the kitchen table chair to eat. Manka fed him a beautiful meal. tasty meat and vegetables, and poured just a little bit of a sleeping potion into his wine. And so as the meal ended, he fell sound asleep. Manka called the servants and had him carried to her wagon, packed a small bag of clothes for herself and her husband, and had the servants drive the wagon to her house, her father's house, really. The servants carried the judge into Manka's bedroom and lay her on his bed. And when he woke up the next morning, past noon, he looked around and wasn't sure where he was. He called for his servants, and the servants weren't there. And Manka came in, bringing a tray with his breakfast. "Husband, husband, you're awake. Here's your breakfast." And he narrowed his eyes and he said, "Where am I?" "Oh, well, husband, remember yesterday you said when you sent me back to my father's house that I could take the one thing from our house that I loved most, and you're the one thing I love most. So I brought you." She smiled. And that smile made all his anger melt away. He said, "My wife, you are cleverer than me. From now on, we shall sit in judgment together, you and I. And if I can't figure out the answer to a problem, I will ask you to help." And Manka smiled. And they embraced. And people said the two of them, they judged in that village together to the end of their days. And everyone went away, knowing that whatever was done, whether they liked it or not, at least it was fair. And that's the end of the story.